The first round of the NFL playoffs is tomorrow, which means two things. One, we get to see which teams are real, which teams throughout this regular season have done what actually mattered, which is prepare for the postseason, be ready to show what they really are inside, and if they can go the distance and win the Super Bowl. And two, I need to hurry up and get this video out. So let's get right into it. First, I do want to say that I'm using the Pro Football Network's predict playoff games bracket thingy. If you want to use it yourself or check it out, go ahead. This isn't my website that I made with my own hands because I have no clue how to do that. Sorry if that isn't creative enough for you, that I didn't use graphics or anything, but this was the simpler way to do it. The other thing is I'm not going to be doing score predictions. That just kind of feels useless and like a waste of time to me. I do have the NFL script for the playoffs. Roger Goodell gave it to me himself, but he left out the scores this year, so we're just going to wing it in terms of that. And I'm going to be breaking down how, I see each game going, which will kind of give an indicator as to the scores of the game, but not any specific scores. So let's get right into it with the Bills versus the Broncos. Now, this game is very interesting to me because a few reasons. The Broncos and their defense has been really good throughout the season. I mean, literally one of the best in the league, and that's not an over-exaggeration or anything. It has been one of the best in the league. And with that as well, Bo Nix has been phenomenal on offense. Phenomenal, maybe pushing it a bit. He's been really good, especially for a rookie. I think a lot of the times we look at 7-seed teams and see them as a team that just kind of snuck in or whatever, especially a team like the Broncos who have had really bad seasons over the last few years, have a rookie quarterback. I don't see the Broncos as a team that just snuck in. This to me feels very much like a playoff team, and I'm glad to see them have made it this far and come this far and get into the playoffs. Unfortunately, they are matched up against the Bills, who are one of the best teams in the league and have a quarterback that might win MVP this season. How I kind of see this game going is actually in the first half, I don't see it being a very high-scoring endeavor, although the Bills do have a really good offense, and the Broncos know what they're doing on offense as well. I think the defensive matchup is going to be really important as well. As we head more into the second half of this game, defense is going to get a little bit more tired. These offenses are just going to catch up because there's really good players on both sides. So it'll kind of, I said I wouldn't do score predictions, but I see it kind of being like a, 23-16, 23-17, something like that or whatever, as we get towards the end of the game. And the Bills likely putting it away in some form. So that's going to be my prediction for this first round in the wild card is the Bills. I don't think that's a hot take or anything. It would be unfortunate, for the Broncos to get this far and lose first round, but at the end of the day, they've made it this far in the last few seasons. They are lucky to do so. So big win for the Bills to move on to the next round. We'll finish up the wild card rounds for the AFC and then move to the NFC if that was something that you were curious about for some reason. Moving on to the next game, Steelers versus Ravens. The Ravens and the Steelers have always been interesting to me, and now they're in the same division, so they play each other 2 times a year. When we're looking over the last 5 to 6 years or whatever, I think a lot of people see these teams very differently. The Ravens have pretty consistently, again, over the last 5 to 6 years, since Lamar has been starting for them, been a high-powered offense, at times, really good defense, a lot of different interesting moving parts there that lead them to having success in the regular season. The Steelers are a team that has had a very, very good defense with no quarterback, no sense of direction on offense, not a whole lot to do on offense except score points with your kicker. And they usually end up being 9-8, whereas the Ravens typically have been, over the last 5 to 6 years, one of the best regular season teams in the entire league. With all that being said about these two teams, they've had very similar 5 to 6 year windows. Both kind of getting into the first round and, losing. So This is going to be a big deal for the Ravens and for Lamar Jackson to get a win here and to show that although their record against the Steelers, even within the last 5 to 6 years, isn't that good, they can beat them in a big moment like this and show up. The team that 100% should win this is the Ravens. I'm going to predict that they do, but listen, man, you don't know with the Steelers. They beat the Ravens earlier this year. It was kind of a weird game, and there was a lot of unfortunate happenings for the Ravens, but we'll give them the nod here. They 100% should win this. And I think if they win this, it can kind of give them a lot of motivation heading into the next game to do well. Moving on to the Chargers and the Texans. Two teams I really like, especially, over the last couple seasons. I mean, really only the last couple seasons have I been caring about these teams individually. Could not care less about the Texans since before CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud gets there. He's a phenomenal rookie. All of a sudden, I'm a fan. And the Chargers, kind of, similar to that, except it's just been this year that I've been a really big fan of them. And that's been with what John Harbaugh's done for this team. Or, not John. That's what Jim Harbaugh has been doing for this team. Complete turnaround, right? This is a team that has underachieved for the last little while. That I would say now at this point, with the roster they have, has overachieved by getting into the playoffs. Now, that's not me saying that they didn't deserve to be in the playoffs or that this team isn't very good or anything. That's just saying this roster isn't incredible across the board, and they've made it to this playoff spot, been, the 5 seed. And here they are. They don't have quite the firepower, I think, to win deep in the playoffs and make a Super Bowl run here. But here's what I will say, and I'll kind of talk about the Texans here as an excuse to get to them. The Texans have had a lot of highs this season. They've done a lot of good stuff, but they've also done a lot of really, really bad stuff. This is probably the most inconsistent playoff team in the playoffs this year, both on defense and offense. I mean, this is a team that had CJ Stroud, has CJ Stroud, and the receivers from last year with the addition of Stephon Diggs, who's been out. So the projection, and my projection as well, is that they'd be a deep playoff team. CJ Stroud would be an MVP candidate, yet here they are, and I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this. I think these are two different teams. One is the Chargers, who play really consistent, high-value chain movement offense sort of team, and the Texans, who you just don't know what you're going to get. I know the Chargers are going to Charger, and this time I mean it in a good way because of the Harbaugh effect and what he's done there. They're going to do their thing. They're going to run the football. They're going to have, a lot of short completions to move the chains that way. They're going to play sound defense. The defensive players are going to play very hard, know what they're doing, even if they aren't the best athletes, best NFL talent in the world. They're going to be consistent enough to beat the Texans in this. There's dogs outside fighting or something. I don't know, but they're barking pretty loud, so sorry about that. Jesus Christ. Michael Vick? On to the NFC first game, Packers-Eagles. This is an unfortunately tough matchup for the Packers week 1 in the playoffs, which is a team kind of, like I was saying with the Texans, who really came along last season. And so heading into this season, there was the projection of, they did really well last season. Well, if all these young pieces get another year of experience and they get to build off that a little bit, they should be even better. They've been better in some ways, but the Packers have struggled a lot in other ways this season and haven't in every way gotten better. Now, again, they're the 7th seed facing the number 2 Eagles, who are one of the best teams in the league. So it is an unfortunate matchup, but this is what you get when you lose to the Bears. I don't know this for 100%, but I'm pretty sure if they won against the Bears, they would have had a matchup against the Buccaneers, which would have been much more favorable, and I probably would have predicted them to win. That being said, I will pick the Eagles to win this. This is just a incredibly filled out roster with a lot of talent across the board. It's going to take a lot for the Packers to win this. Now, this is assuming both quarterbacks, because they're both a little bit dicey with injury reports right now. Both quarterbacks are healthy at the time this game gets played. I'm going to make that assumption and hope that that's what happens, so we get a good game and neither team gets squashed. Although it would be fun seeing Malik Willis out there throwing dimes. I'm hoping Jordan Love is going to be out there throwing dimes because it's fun watching him too, and hoping that Jalen Hurts is. I want to see these teams at their best go at it. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be semi-high scoring. We'll get into the 30s by the end of it. One team get into the 30s. But, we're going to have a strong focus on the run game. Both of these teams like the run game as well, which can lead to high scoring as well. But probably not going to be light up the scoreboard type of stuff. Although the Packers' secondary isn't that amazing. So I wouldn't be surprised if A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith get a couple deep balls their way. Moving on to the next wild card round in the NFC, the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers have been a team that I've really liked as long as Baker's been there. I didn't care about them at all before Baker got there. And then Baker gets there and he's playing up a next level, and it really feels like this is where he belongs. This is where Baker Mayfield should be. He feels like a Buccaneer through and through. This is the attitude that they want and that the Buccaneers have had for the most part for a while. He feels like the truest Buccaneers quarterback. I'm a huge fan of Baker, so glad with the season he's had. The offense has obviously struggled a little bit this season with some of the injuries they've dealt with, like with Godwin and all that. And Mike Evans has been out a few games as well. With Mike Evans healthy, this offense is going to be tough to beat. But the thing with Baker Mayfield and this offense is, again, like I was saying with the Texans, inconsistency. Sometimes we'll get a series from Baker Mayfield where he looks like a true top 3, top 5 quarterback and is just, reading the field out, dicing up, making really accurate, consistent throws, scoring. And then the next quarter, he looks like, Panthers Baker Mayfield all over again. So that's tough. But then over onto the Commanders, this is a team whose roster isn't as good and has probably overachieved this season. There's a few reasons behind that. The coaching system that they have with Dan Quinn as a head coach, who's a culture and defensive guy, and then an offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, who should only be an offensive coordinator, but is a very good one at that. That's a really good tandem and duo to have. And then also Jaden Daniels, who is the number one talking point for this team. He's phenomenal. It's tough to talk about rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs because you don't know how they do when these moments show up. You don't know what it's going to look like. But I will say this, Jaden Daniels has proven throughout basically the entirety of the season that the moment doesn't get too big and that he is a consistent quarterback. I'm going to project that the Commanders win this game, and I do think it's going to come down to quarterback play. I do think it's going to come down to the turnover battle and how many times Baker Mayfield turns it over versus Jaden Daniels and who makes bigger plays. And I think Jaden Daniels is going to win this one. I don't know how big of an upset or underdog this would be in other people's minds if they agree with me and think that the Commanders are going to win this, but this is going to be my pick for sure. Moving on to the next game, the Vikings and the Rams. Obviously, Rams are in a tough situation right now. This game might be moved to Arizona due to the fires going on in Los Angeles. The Vikings, who could have been the number 1 seed if not for losing to the Lions, which is kind of weird. NFL seeding is a little bit odd. I get why they do it. That's not what the conversation is, but I think in most people's eyes, the better team and who should be higher seeded is the Vikings. That's not incredibly important, but one thing it did do is make it so that the Vikings have an away game against the Rams, which kind of got taken away now because it's being moved to Arizona. So what we have at this moment is a neutral zone game that has a much better team throughout the season playing against the Rams. I'm really divided on this, though. The thing with the Vikings And their defense specifically, their pass defense isn't incredible. They have actually a pretty lackluster passing defense. The Rams, with Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Sean McVay as the head coach and play caller and everything, have an incredible passing offense. So I think there's a chance that this game gets swung the Rams' way and they come out with a win. But I am going to take the Vikings instead of just leaving some suspense. I'll keep that there. This is going to be a high-scoring endeavor, in my opinion. What we're really going to have to look out for is, how does Sam Darnold do? Is he just going to crumble up and fall apart in the playoffs, or is he going to play the kind of football he's played all season? I don't think this defense, the Rams defense, is scary enough that any of that crumpling up happens from Sam Darnold. So I will keep the Vikings to win this. But I do think, similar to a few other games the Vikings have had this season, it's going to be high scoring and it might come down to the last second. Moving back over to the AFC for the divisional games, we have the Chargers versus the Chiefs. This is pretty simply, to me, going to be the Chiefs. This is what they do. They win in the playoffs. I've said this on multiple occasions, but the thing about the Chiefs, you can say all you want about Patrick Mahomes' stats and what they do on offense and how he just dumps it down or whatever. The number one thing that Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid does the best is win football games. More importantly, win football games that matter. So I think this is a pretty easy pick for me to make. There's a lot of Chiefs haters that want this to be, a first week one loss for the Chiefs and just get them out of there. They're sick of them. They're sick of Taylor Swift. They're sick of the refs and everything. This, on paper, should be Chiefs all day. I don't want to completely write off the Chargers in this because, like I said, Harbaugh's done an incredible job. But I did say earlier that they did overachieve a bit in comparison to their roster. And this is where that kind of catches up with them, in my opinion, is against the Chiefs in the second round of the playoffs. So this will be Chiefs for me. On to the next game. Obviously a very tough one, the Bills versus the Ravens. Now, earlier in the season, we did see the Ravens beat the Bills in a pretty, in handed fashion. They really took it to them. I'm not going to pay attention to that so much because I think this is a different time of year, and this is honestly different teams. These are teams that have figured out different stuff, are approaching the playoffs differently. As a Ravens fan, this is kind of tough to talk about a little bit. I don't want to come off as biased, but also want to be honest about things. So you can call me biased if you want, but when I look at the reasons that the Ravens did beat the Bills, it was that the matchup of the run game and the big bodies on the offensive line of scrimmage just couldn't, be held back by the Bills' defense. They have a really good defense. They don't have a defense that's elite and electric at stopping a offensive running attack that way. So I'm going to pick the Ravens here. You can call me biased and, make fun of me for it if you want. That's the pick I'm going to make. I think this, again, I'm not making this decision based off who won last, but I'm paying attention to who won last and why. And the Ravens have the matchup here, in my opinion. The Bills aren't entirely built to beat the Ravens, at least this season. And we do kind of have this MVP duel going. I think this is going to be a lot closer game. I think Josh Allen's going to find his rhythm and play a lot better than he did in that first matchup. This is probably earlier than a lot of people would say, and they probably want to see the Bills versus Chiefs matchup, but I'm predicting that the Ravens get this far at least. Moving back over to the NFC, we have the Commanders and the Lions. Despite the injuries that the Lions have dealt with, this is the better team. Like I said, also similar with the Chargers, I think the Commanders kind of overachieved in a few different aspects. Not luck necessarily, but, they've had things go their way, and I think this is as far as it takes them, and the Lions are just destined to do this, to make this sort of a run. So that'll be my prediction there. And it was kind of funny that Dan Campbell said see you in 2 weeks after he beat the Vikings at the end of the season. I guess he said that assuming that the Buccaneers were going to win, but I have the Commanders in this slot here. But moving on, Vikings versus Eagles. This is, again, really tough one. Two very competitive teams that have had very good seasons. I'm going to give this one to the Eagles. This is a really big matchup for both sides of the ball, offense, defense, trenches. It's, again, does this mean that Sam Darnold completely falls apart? If they lose, no. I think in general this is a really tough game for anyone, and I could see anyone losing this game. The Eagles have one of the most filled out rosters in the league right now, and not just filled out, but they have incredible, elite talent in a lot of places. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as a receiving duo is nuts. Saquon Barkley on the ground is crazy. This is the best offensive line in the league, except for maybe the Lions. This is going to be an incredibly tough game for the Vikings, for the Eagles. But I see them coming out on top of this one as well. Now we get to the conference championships games. Similar to last year's game, we have the Ravens versus the Chiefs. Which are people going to hate me for more? If I pick the team that I like to go to the Super Bowl, or if I pick the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl? I'm going to just be honest about things. Until proven otherwise, the Chiefs are going to win this. Is this the year that a team like the Ravens could get it done? Absolutely. Especially against a team like the Chiefs, who are not beat up, but have been lackluster in a lot of ways, as they are, and have made games incredibly close. But this team is just a different breed in the playoffs. The Chiefs are a different beast in the playoffs entirely. The Ravens are not. So until proven otherwise, and I hope I'm wrong, the Chiefs win this game and head to the Super Bowl. Moving on to the NFC, Eagles, Lions. What a game this is going to be if we get this. This is going to be fantastic. So that's at the very minimum, either, if you're an Eagles fan or a Lions fan, that's one thing everyone could look forward to. This game should be phenomenal. With that being said, I'm going to ride the take I've had for a lot of this season, and especially at this latter end. The Lions kind of feels like it's just destiny for them to get this. I can talk about matchup stuff all I want. I kind of already talked about that already with the other games. I see the Lions going to the Super Bowl this season and beating the Eagles, despite their issues with injuries on defense. Now we get to the big moment, the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are right back in it, trying to three-peat. The Lions, after so much hardship, after so many struggles for so many years, they're at this moment where they have things figured out and are making a postseason run, and they finally get to the Super Bowl. What happens? I think the Lions win this. I'm picking the Lions. Oh, that's cool. That's cute. Picking the Lions to win this. I'm picking the Lions to win the Super Bowl and win out. They've showed throughout this season and the latter end of the season that despite the injuries they've had, they're still able to win games, still able to retain that number one in the NFC seed and just win out as best as they can. Games they've lost this year at the latter end have been close, have been really close. Even though, it came down to the wire and they couldn't fully get it done, those losses have been really close. But here they are with the script that I've read that Roger Goodell gave me, winning the Super Bowl. So that's going to be my Super Bowl prediction or playoff prediction. Let me move this a little bit, see if I can I get this? Yeah. There's a last look at it there if you're interested in seeing the full thing. Thank you for watching. Bye.